Schools use a whole school approach to moderation processes to align curriculum, pedagogy, assessment and reporting. This includes developing and sustaining a shared assessment literacy, using data to determine the focus of moderation, engaging teachers in moderation to reach consensus, and using data collected through moderation processes to inform an intentional approach to improvement. This episode is part 2 of a 3-part series that focuses on effective moderation processes at multiple junctures. In the first episode, we looked at moderation processes at the before juncture. This episode focuses on effective practices for moderating a task after assessment takes place, but before it is graded, and after assessment is graded. The purpose of moderation after assessment takes place, but before it is graded, is to support teachers to calibrate their judgments about student responses in a summative assessment task against the targeted aspects of the achievement standard that are being assessed. The example strategy activity card to moderate at this juncture can be found under the Moderation tab on the Assessment and Moderation Hub. Let's look at how the process might work. Teachers administer the summative assessment and collect student responses. Teachers select 3 sample student responses representing evidence at, above and below the C standard. Teachers then engage in moderation conversations to calibrate their judgments. Teachers match the evidence of student achievement in the response to the relevant aspects of the achievement standard being assessed using the task-specific standard descriptors for each assessable element on the marking guide. Teachers then make an on-balance judgment about the quality of student evidence against each assessable element, then reach consensus to determine and award an overall level of achievement, taking into consideration the significance of each assessable element in relation to the purpose of the task, and using the appropriate reporting scale. Once teachers have done this, they can confidently mark the assessment for the rest of the class.
I'm a teaching principal of a small school with 3 teachers, and even though I don't teach the Prep to 2 class, I sit down with the teacher and we look at a couple of the assessment tasks. And we look and we discuss, is there evidence in that work to match the guides that we're using?
So we are quite a large primary school and we have 5 to 6 teachers on each year level, plus an inclusion teacher as well. When they come through, they have a look at the assessment task and they administer the same assessment task. Before they go through to mark, they make sure that they calibrate their understandings to make sure that they are across the assessment before going to remark.
So as a team of science teachers, we think it's really important to come together and moderate at different times throughout the unit. We also use a number of strategies to calibrate and to make sure the teachers are on the same page when it comes to our marking. So, for example, one of our strategies is that we review and remark assessment pieces that have been previously moderated from the last year's cohort, and that helps make sure the teachers are comfortable in making consistent judgments on an assessment item. We also co-mark the formative assessment pieces and drafts to sort of ensure consistent marking and make sure that the students are on track for their upcoming assessment piece. Once the assessment piece is handed out, but before we mark the entire cohort, we'll also, as teachers, come together and co-mark about 3 of the assessment pieces. That way we ensure everyone's on the same page before we go and mark the rest of our classes. At each stage, we also take note of any strengths, weaknesses, or areas of improvement for our assessment pieces, for our pedagogical practices, the teaching strategies we use, and the learning sequence. And that informs our future planning and makes sure that we're delivering the best course that we can.
The purpose of moderation after assessment is graded is to support teachers to confirm judgments about student responses in a summative assessment task against the targeted aspects of the achievement standard that are being assessed. The example strategy activity card to moderate at this juncture can be found under the Moderation tab on the Assessment and Moderation Hub. Let's look at how this process might work. After teachers calibrate their judgments and then mark the rest of the student's assessment, they may select 5 example student responses representing evidence at each level of achievement, A, B, C, D and E if applicable, as well as any tricky ones they wish to discuss. Teachers engage in moderation processes to confirm judgments using each sample student response in turn. Teachers match the evidence of student achievement in the response to the relevant aspect of the achievement standard that's being assessed, using the task-specific standard descriptors for each accessible element on the marking guide. Teachers then make an on-balance judgment about the quality of student evidence against each accessible element, then reach consensus about the overall level of achievement, taking into consideration the significance of each accessible element in relation to the purpose of the task.
At this point in the moderation process, we connect with 2 other small schools like ours that are just down the road. And we do this intentionally to provide discussions for our teachers with other teachers that teach the same year levels at other schools. Our teachers may not be administering the exact same assessment task. However, they are making judgments of students' evidence against the same achievement standards. It's about reaching consensus about the evidence against the standard.
So in addition to confirming our A to E, moderation processes give time for teachers to discuss and confirm all of the student responses. Teachers are given the opportunities to discuss and reach consensus about the student evidence in relation to each of the accessible elements. For example, if there is uneven performance across the accessible elements, then the rigorous discussion assists teachers to reach consensus and award the appropriate overall level of achievement for the task. Our teachers really value the time to authentically work together.
In the far southwest of the state, we've approximately 100 teachers and principals who moderate together on a virtual platform 4 times a year. Using the IC as our virtual platform enables teachers in rural and remote areas to moderate at this juncture as well as the other junctures across the year, and even though they might be physically distant by over 1,000 kilometres from each other. Nearly 30 primary, Peter 10 and secondary schools intentionally collaborate around the moderation, and this enables teachers not only to develop a deep knowledge and understanding of the curriculum, but also to build expert teaching teams, even though they might be miles apart.
State schools across Queensland are engaging in effective moderation processes to interrogate student responses to summative assessment. In doing this, they can ensure that consistent and accurate judgments are being made about the quality of student learning against the relevant achievement standards.